Hey, good morning. This is Tyler Brugdenhill for the channel Agronomy Blitz Accelerated Insights for your agronomic advantage. It's June 23rd here in south central Nebraska. If you survived the 3 days of 90 plus or even 100 and 35 mile an hour winds, congratulations. That was not what I needed to experience, but it's summer nonetheless here. So let's dive into what the crop outlook looks like. Starting out here with our growing degree day update for the state of Nebraska. And I've done this in past videos, but looking at two separate planting dates, if we would have started the 20th of April, you can see for the state, not really much difference with an April 20th planting start date versus May 5th. Still the same spots that are trending ahead, and the same spot if you look in southeast Nebraska here trending behind. But if you look for my territory as a whole, um, really, down at Alma, you're about 50 units ahead of what we would consider average. But then in other areas, you could be, anywhere from 30 units behind. But you know, as a whole, not anything to get worked up about or concerned about from a growing degree day accumulation standpoint. Now, as we go into the precipitation ranks by climate district, this is looking at the whole United States or the Midwest in particular. Western Corn Belt still looking really, really dry. Western Iowa, Nebraska as a whole, but especially the eastern and south central parts of the state, still very dry. And this is looking at the beginning of April to date. And, for south central Nebraska as a climate district, we are experiencing the 120th driest year out of 133. So this is data that's going back to 1893, and the closest to one you are, the wetter you are, and the closer to 133, the drier. So 120, not a great outlook right now for us unless we get a big weather pattern change. That does look to change this week considerably with the amount of chances of rain that we have in the forecast. So if you look at the corn growth cycle, and again, I've shown this graph in the past, and I'll bring it back up again. Don't get hung up on the 400 bushel piece. This is looking at weekly nutrition to grow 400 bushel corn. Rather look at when you think about the macronutrients and our secondary macro sulfur, be thinking about when these need to take place and when is this corn crop asking for those nutrients specifically. So, I've talked about potassium in the past few weeks, and I say that because by V16, and I've got corn anywhere from V6 to V16 in my territory, some even bigger than that, honestly. But if you look at V16, 74% of our potassium for required for making that crop is uptaken by V16. So it's not so much, and I've had this discussion in the past couple of weeks. It's not so much, hey, what is my soil test saying I have in the bank? It is that nutrition actually available? It's one thing to have it, but it's another thing, is it available? I kind of use this analogy a lot of times. Um, it's great to have $1 million in a bank account, but if you don't have the PIN number to access it, it doesn't do you a lot of good. So I've talked to numerous people that we've seen some potassium deficiencies in corn and soybeans both this year, and they go, man, I don't get it. I've got potassium numbers that are off the charts. And it's like, well, having it off the charts is one thing, having it available is something else. So interesting thing to look at. The other interesting piece about that, you got 48% of your phosphorus is being uptaken by V16, and then 53% of our nitrogen. So a lot of guys getting that last round of nitrogen on, or even hilling if they're going into if they are going into a gravity field specifically. So there's a lot of corn that's getting too tall to do a lot of things with. And pretty soon there's going to be a lot of doors closing on, hey, what management decisions and recommendations and strategies can we still use to have an influence on the yield potential in this crop? So just overall an interesting graph nonetheless. The other piece that I point out is sulfur. I think that's one. just my humble opinion that we've probably missed out on. Sulfur is a secondary macronutrient. A lot of times you think about having, for every 10 pounds of nitrogen, you kind of want 1 pound of sulfur to go around along with that. Some people would disagree um, with that ratio as well. So again, whatever that is, be looking at what your sulfur strategy is. But I want to point this out. Most of that sulfur is going to be uptaken in the late reproductive stages. So if you haven't thought about doing something and you have the ability to fertigate those types of things, kind of ask yourself, hey, have I used sulfur to the maximum? And if I have used sulfur in the past, has it been enough? So we'll keep going here. And again, I kind of covered this already, but corn's in grand growth stage. So exciting because we know flowering is coming up very, very soon. Also concerning because we have high sensitivity to heat and drought stress. And then we also have that ability for root lodging, green snap, all those things that come with, unfortunately, the late thunderstorms that come with late June, early July. It seems like this is our big window for susceptibility. And if we're going to get a really hot cell coming through the area from a thunderstorm standpoint, it's something to be cognizant about, be ready for if those storm systems do pop up. And what I really wanted to spend some time on today is going into the disease piece in corn and also insect. But just to start things out, tar spot, of course, if you're following this map through corn IPM pipe, last week, I think we had 2 to 3 counties at this time. Um, I believe if I counted right, we're up to 13 when I ran this at 10 o'clock on Tuesday. So it has exploded. My coaching for this has always been obviously know what your germplasm tolerance is like in just innate germplasm tolerance. Understand what your field history has been, and understand what tar spot is going to like to develop. Is unfortunately, if you look at the future forecast for this week, 7 hours of leaf wetness, 75% relative humidity, 70 to 80-degree temps. We had some really hot weather and hot and windy weather both blow through, which probably helped us in this case specifically. But there's still going to be some things to think about here in this upcoming week because unfortunately, if I was going to draw up conditions for the perfect way to blow up tar spot, these are kind of the conditions I would look for. So another thing to point out, just because it's 13 counties on this map does not mean that it's not in your county. These are the ones where it's been confirmed and reported through the tar spot mapping network. So just because it's not lit up in yellow on your county in this spot particularly, doesn't mean you couldn't have it. It just simply hasn't been found and confirmed to be tar spot. So last thing that I want to bring up is kind of our recommendations from Bayer Crop Science. If you've got it being tar spot detected at tassel, we really urge you to think about hitting it with Delaro Complete at a 12-ounce rate at VTR1. And then, if needed, coming back with a second pass at R2 to R4 of just straight Delaro. Scenario C being if you've got it detected prior to tassel, hitting it with 8 ounces of Delaro up front, and then hitting it with Delaro Complete with 12 ounces of Delaro Complete as a second pass. So this is all going to be dependent upon what your inoculum presence is, what your innate germplasm tolerance is going to be, but make sure we're out in front of this thing and making sure we know what options lie ahead, because a lot of times a one pass system is probably not going to be enough with this disease, as powerful and as susceptible as some of these germplasm lines still are, with this being a newer disease to us. So last thing I would bring up, Crop Protection Network does a really nice job of looking at multiple different fungicides, in particular with certain diseases. So go on there, make sure, make an informed decision about what you want to use. I know Delaro Complete is one of very few that has a very good rating on tar spot. Similarly, I've had a lot of conversations with southern corn rust. I wanted to run this map. I would tell you, unless we start getting a lot of hot, dry winds from the south, which can definitely happen, this is what uh, the southern rust map looks like for the south right now. So we've got one confirmed county in Texas, a couple in Mississippi. You got maybe one in Alabama, quite a bit in Georgia, and a couple in Florida. So, um, again, unless things change fast, which they can, I would say we're probably not right now looking at a really heavy infectious southern rust year unless conditions change fast. Uh, Last thing I wanted to talk about is the corn rootworm wash. So again, Bayer as a company is running the watch program. So if that's something where you want to have sticky traps out and monitor what that beetle count looks like in your field, so you get some good idea of historical background data, that's something that you can go on the website and order sticky traps. Um, it's usually been thought of about 50% of the corn rootworm eggs are going to be hatched between 684 and 767 GDDs, which you can see for a state, obviously in the southern and the southeast parts of the state, that's been for quite some time. So those are likely hatched and feeding on roots already. For the panhandle and the northern parts, we're probably getting right into that 50% hatch timing. So again, another thing that we got to keep a watch out for and understand and remember what that historical presence has been in your fields in the past. And then lastly, again, I didn't mean to make this all about corn, but it kind of became that. So, in the soybean world, obviously summer solstice has occurred. So we've got some flowers definitely coming out. The big thing I wanted to talk about in soybeans is obviously, R1 means a flower at any node on that plant. And again, it starts to become more of a conversation now if we haven't made a post emerge application of herbicide, being cognizant about, hey, what are we using, staying on label. This is a plant that likes to abort flowers just naturally. So why give it another reason to abort more flowers than we need to? Just be mindful of what we're applying, rates we're applying. I've just seen in the past where if we try and do a rescue application of herbicide, um, sometimes the weed species that are out there and the population of those weed species, I think we end up taking more yield potential away from the plants itself by having it metabolize more chemistry than if we'd have just left those random weeds out there in some cases. So it's a personal decision that we all have to make, but one that I would just think through more heavily now that we have the abundance of flowering going on in the soybean fields. So last slide, as I've always put up here, is just water use. Obviously, we've been uh, tasked with doing a lot more watering than we all would like at this point, but I'm not going to go through each one of these here. But obviously, corn water use ramping up here as we get closer to flowering time, and then certainly in the soybean world, want to keep water in front of these as we begin flowering. To begin the reproductive stages. So, as always, walk those fields. I appreciate your time, and we hope to see you next week. Thanks a lot.